Welcome back, folks, and welcome to what is our final content session of the morning and our final content session of the entire summit, our closing keynote. Now, if there's one thing I think we've learned these past few days as we transition from one manufacturing era to another, it's that legacy behaviors, business models, and technology architecture must make way for new ones. And it's the Smart Manufacturing Institute who are helping and supporting US manufacturers do this through a collaborative ecosystem of partners, an interoperable technology standard, and continuous improvement in workforce development and education to help break down those barriers. And that's precisely what we're going to explore now in this next session with our final speaker, John Dyke, who is the CEO at CESMII, the Smart Manufacturing Institute. John, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Fantastic. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here with us as part of our closing keynote here on day 3. I should just fully disclose CESMII. Am I right to say that as an acronym, or should I be going for a different approach?
That's it. You nailed it.
Nailed it. Phew. Okay. Well, that's a start. John, tell us about CESMII. It's pretty much says what it does on the tin. I'm sure it's more nuanced than that, but tell us a bit about it before we get into your presentation.
Yeah, we're one of a number of Manufacturing USA institutes funded by the federal government, each with a different lens or different area of focus and investment. And ours is obviously smart manufacturing. And we're here to accelerate investment in, to identify, based on a roadmap and a strategic investment plan, identify those technologies, the knowledge, the capabilities that are key to helping manufacturers become more competitive here in the US. And again, our lens is clearly smart manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. Which has been so pertinent actually to a lot of the sessions we've had here today and over the course of the summit. So really looking forward to hearing more about it here in our closing keynote, John. But yes, you've got some slides for us, I believe, a presentation that you're going to deliver. So we'll go ahead and get those ready for you now, in fact, and they should be there. There they are. So John, look, I'll hand over to you, and just like we've done with all of our speakers, be back shortly for some Q&A to close us out. So audience members, if you've got any questions for John, you know what to do. Get them into us early doors and we'll bring you up for the final session. But John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I appreciated the previous conversations and wanted to kind of share with the audience today, with you all today, what I believe is an urgent call to action to accelerate the adoption for smart manufacturing for the industrial Internet of Things, for digital transformation in the US. We're frankly falling behind the adoption rate of these important capabilities in Europe and in Asia. And so what I'd like to share with you today is a quick walkthrough, kind of who CESMII is, just briefly, and then a bit of a reality check in terms of where things stand, and then the things that we believe are vital for US manufacturers, frankly, global manufacturers, and manufacturing is obviously a very global enterprise, but important for manufacturers big and small. And so to get started here, here's a high-level look at CESMII. CESMII stands for the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. We're funded by the Department of Energy to the tune of $140 million over a 5-year period. And our opportunity is to identify, as I mentioned, those capabilities that we believe will accelerate the adoption of smart manufacturing and help manufacturers here build more competitive operations and competitive supply chains for their enterprises. And so we've identified these 5 stakeholders as a consortia. We're a private-public partnership, and so we've identified these 5 stakeholders as being vital to kind of raising the bar for how manufacturing systems are deployed and used to create value across the enterprise and supply chain. Those 5 stakeholders, as you see, are the manufacturers, the technology providers and vendors, the systems integrators and consultants, the machine builders, and of course, the educators. And so from our standpoint, as we raise the tide, as we focus on a strategy that will create a more competitive manufacturing environment here. We believe all 5 of those stakeholder sets need to engage with us collectively, and as we raise the tide, all boats will float higher. To encapsulate our vision and our mission, we talk about accelerating the democratization of smart manufacturing. The reality is we have a manufacturing legacy here that has created a level of cost and complexity that's extraordinary, and frankly, one that we need to address going forward. And so democratization from our standpoint means addressing that cost and complexity, aggressively reducing cost and complexity of those manufacturing systems implementations. Our ecosystem, our consortia consists of those 5 groups of stakeholders here, about 160 members that are collaborating here to invest in, to plan for, to refine the areas of investment that we've identified here around technology, around knowledge or education, and around ecosystem development. How do we create a more effective ecosystem where we let our sort of proprietary legacy and our tendency to invest in proprietary systems and proprietary data structures and proprietary architectures, leave that behind and move forward in a much more open and an interoperable way, which is how we fundamentally believe the market will move forward. As I mentioned before, adoption of smart manufacturing here in the U.S. has fallen behind those other great manufacturing regions around the world. This to me was a bit of a shocker as I looked at the last several decades, sort of third industrial revolution, in terms of productivity by manufacturing worker. We saw a steady, significant increase in manufacturing productivity. And of course, in 2011, we first heard from our German friends about the fourth industrial revolution. And of course, the major analysts and sort of think tanks around the world talked about significant value creation. In fact, in the US, we would see a $3.8 trillion value creation through the fourth industrial revolution. Now, one would expect then that this productivity curve here in the US would at least maintain its current growth, and frankly, perhaps even accelerate. That's what this fourth industrial revolution was supposed to bring about. But the reality is, our productivity, for the first time in recorded history, plateaued and then began declining. And I think it's really important for us to understand, aside from obviously the greater complexities of geopolitics and sort of broader economic disparities, but from our perspective, we have thought hard and worked hard to understand the nuances behind why that productivity curve plateaued and then began declining. I think among other reasons, I think there's a significant maturing of continuous improvement initiatives, automation initiatives, capital investment in manufacturing systems based on what we believe is a sort of capping of the complexity and cost that as a manufacturing ecosystem we could really afford. And so as we thought about that, as we kind of worked on our strategy, what could we, with $140 million in 5 years impact, we fundamentally reached the point where we identified some fundamental complexities and costs that we felt we could address for the ecosystem that would make every one of these stakeholder groups more competitive and more productive. It is important to realize, as we just heard from the previous speaker and many of the speakers before him, that business drivers and manufacturing business outcomes didn't change with the introduction of the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, they haven't changed for decades. The need to increase quality, throughput, and yield, compliance, safety, while focusing on a decrease in cost, complexity, time to value, risk, et cetera, those have been and will continue to be the outcomes, the business outcomes that our manufacturers are looking for. But it's important to recognize, as I said, that a decade after the fourth industrial revolution, we have not seen a significant the anticipated significant uptick in these areas, and certainly the cost and complexity of implementing solutions to drive these business outcomes has not changed. And so, in sort of trying to encapsulate all of that, I'd like to share with you from one of our manufacturing members their actual manufacturing systems taxonomy, or the landscape of manufacturing IT, sanctioned manufacturing IT systems that they've developed over the last 3 or 4 decades. I call this the use case abyss. The idea that over the decades, as manufacturing leadership has said, hey, we need to look at our quality. We need to look at our track and trace birth history. We need to look at error proofing. We need to look at improving our productivity, our downtime analysis. So individual plants and corporate have worked over the years to build a solution to solve a specific need over the years, and yet over time, every single one of these individual systems reaches down to the shop floor, grabs data, structures that data, contextualizes it, presents that data in unique ways with a unique user experience. And yet, at the end of every shift, in every single one of these roughly 68 plants, this manufacturer spends 40 people hours moving data from those data silos into Tableau or Power BI, into Excel, prints off production reports for a handoff meeting from one shift to the next. And this is one of the most mature manufacturers I've seen in my career. So this is the state of the industry, this level of cost and complexity that is extraordinary. And frankly, it's this complexity that prevents us from adopting new innovative technologies going forward. We sort of characterized on the left-hand side, you'll see the characterization of Industry 3.0, where we feel Industry 3.0 has left us with proprietary closed systems, no interoperability between these systems unless it's custom designed, and those brittle interfaces are complex and costly without exception. Data silos, stovepipe architectures, vendor lock-in, et cetera. This is the outcome, and this is where the industry is today. Now, as we look to the future, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, recently said there's going to be 500 million apps created in the next 5 years, and frankly, many of those will be created in manufacturing. So the real question becomes, from our standpoint, how do we deal with that kind of cost and complexity as that app proliferation hits us on the shop floor? How do we deal with that? Most great vendors, I've worked for Rockwell Automation and GE Fanuc and a small software company that I helped raise venture capital for and then build and see acquired. Most of us in this space have tried to consolidate and build platforms to consolidate that sort of application proliferation, but that frankly hasn't happened, and I believe is the wrong approach. Enabling those applications to play in your manufacturing operations, enterprise, and supply chain in a secure, sanctioned, scalable way is the absolute way we have to be thinking about the future of manufacturing systems. So where is smart manufacturing innovation happening? We don't have the time on this call to dive into this particular discussion, but I felt it was important to take a look at these different stakeholders and recognize that most of these have not been able to drive innovation in their portfolios and in their area of expertise the way I think the manufacturers are demanding and the way manufacturers are anticipating and really needing. And so understanding the maturity of these stakeholder groups, where that innovation is happening, is fundamentally driving CESMII's investment and our approach to how we think about smart manufacturing innovation going forward. So this is the sort of summary of where we stand today. After 11 years of Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution, virtually none of this space, none of this, the technology providers have actually done much more than put lipstick on that pig. And it sounds a little provocative, perhaps, but the reality is manufacturers aren't quick to adopt new technologies. We've introduced cloud and sensorization and industrial IoT, but frankly, all we've done is propagate much of the complexities and cost of the past way of doing things. That closed systems, lack of interoperability has propagated Industry 3.0 ideas into an Industry 4.0 sort of environment. So our goal is to accelerate the movement of this entire ecosystem across this digital divide and ensure that the future, based on what we've called the smart manufacturing first principles, represents a much more interoperable and open environment, sustainability, energy efficient, security, secure and scalable, et cetera. So we are catalyzing, we're working with our ecosystem to catalyze the accelerated movement from this legacy, costly and complex way of doing things to a much more effective way of looking forward. So one of the important pieces to recognize here is that part of our legacy way of implementing systems has been based on what most folks understand as the Purdue model, the sort of graduated movement of information from the sensors and automation on the shop floor to the HMI and supervisory control systems, to the level 3 MES space, and then into the enterprise. And frankly, that structured and rigid and monolithic flow of data up into the enterprise has made it very complex and costly for enterprise and supply chain planning and demand planning and even production scheduling to happen in a real-time way, in a way that responds to changing dynamics on the plant floor. And so that's where we achieve this level of cost and complexity. We believe that as we develop architectures for the future, and as CESMII is investing in innovative technologies and knowledge, that while we can't rip and replace what's there, we have to dramatically enable those existing manufacturing data sources and data systems, those manufacturing architectures, those legacy architectures, to interchange or exchange information in real time in a much more agile and in a much more streamlined way, structured way, secure way, scalable way. And by the way, this will enable, we believe, both the large enterprises and the small, medium manufacturers to engage in digital transformation for the first time. Most small, mid-sized manufacturers can't afford today's burden of cost and complexity. And so this idea of smart manufacturing infrastructure to enable interoperability between these layers of systems, these legacy layers of systems, we believe is absolutely key as we think about the future. And so I won't dwell here, but this is CESMII's technology roadmap and what we've invested in 2022, been able to bring to the marketplace for almost free for the first time in our history. We've created specifications that define the edge, the data ingestion and contextualization platforms, and how those platforms engage with the application layer, all based on an interoperability centric set of information model standards that define how an edge would connect to a data source, that define how a data contextualization platform will structure that data, and then through a graph-based API, enable not just one, but dozens of applications to engage with that structured content in ways that abstract the application from the specific machine, asset, process. This is technical, but frankly, the nuances in reducing costs and complexity lie in these nuances, in creating de facto standards, not standards, but de facto standards for how information is structured, contextualized, and can maintain that contextualization throughout its journey from source to the people and the applications that can do something to create value from that data. And then, of course, a marketplace where the tools, the information models, and the value creation can be accessed essentially for free. So again, this is not where we can dwell and spend any time, but I wanted to at least touch on the idea that this layer, thin but vital layer of data contextualization infrastructure, is where interoperability comes from. And it's through this layer that we can enable both brownfield and greenfield smart manufacturing strategies going forward. And this is how we can enable the productivity, growth, and the sort of trajectory for manufacturers here in the U.S. to dramatically improve their competitiveness, both in the plant, in the enterprise, and across the supply chain. Let me just briefly articulate as well that this is not a U.S.-centric effort. What I've described so far, what you saw on the previous slide, is a U.S. set of investments that we're making available to U.S. manufacturers, small, medium, and large. But we are partnering with our counterparts in other major manufacturing communities here around the world, including Germany with the Platform Industry 4.0, including South Korea and Japan. Other initiatives around the world that are equally recognizing the need for interoperability through crowdsourcing of plant floor information models, processes, and equipment. All of these are areas where we're investing to create visibility for and then see the engagement around these important initiatives. And I know I'm going quickly, but this is a simple slide that articulates where through our partnerships, particularly in Europe, we're working with organizations that are convening hundreds and hundreds of machine builders, for example, to build semantic models, information models for machine types, for process types, for equipment types, based on these de facto standards that are now freely available through our smart manufacturing marketplace for anyone in the world to use. So you're not starting to create these models from scratch every single time in every part of your technology stack and in your applications. And this is how we get to democratizing for smart manufacturing systems. CESMII, as I mentioned, is $140 million to spend. Again, I'm not going to spend time here other than to say, if you go to CESMII.org, you'll see roughly 55 projects that are underway, or some of which have already wrapped up, where we're engaging with real-time, with real manufacturing organizations, great technology providers, disruptive, innovative technology providers, and with academia to improve and invest in these technologies, as I've briefly tried to describe here. And a big part of that too is not just on the technology side, it's on and helping manufacturers, and particularly small and mid-sized manufacturers as well, engage in the process of understanding their current capabilities. This is a smart manufacturing business assessment, business practice assessment that we've created and have given back to the marketplace for anyone to work through and understand what their capabilities are, what their as-is state is, so that they can build a vendor agnostic sort of roadmap for what the future ought to look like and how they can invest in most effective and most productive ways. Part of the disruption of any marketplace requires market movers and market makers to stand up and be counted. And so what we just announced literally 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, I guess, to the marketplace at large, is this formation of a smart manufacturing executive council. It's these great manufacturing organizations that are standing up to advocate for these ideas, to advocate for interoperability, for the smart manufacturing first principles that I alluded to say that digital transformation is a must, but we have to work as an ecosystem with our technology providers, our machine builders, to take the leap forward and sort of leave our proprietary behaviors and capabilities behind. So this Smart Manufacturing Executive Council is going to play a key role for us in advocating for these really important ideas that are not tied to any vendor, any platform. These are really important ecosystem ideas and capabilities for the good of manufacturing here in the US and beyond. Last but not least is the idea that sustainable manufacturing is increasingly becoming a part of our global smart manufacturing transformation initiatives. And so we've begun more aggressively calling out that your ESG and sustainable manufacturing strategies should not stop at manufacturing operations, that your smart manufacturing transformation initiatives can play a massive role in your sustainable manufacturing strategies and your ESG transformation initiatives. So we've been working increasingly aggressively to tie these really important ecosystem and societal challenges into the realm of smart manufacturing, and making sure that manufacturers are equipped to articulate how their smart manufacturing initiatives can play a vital role in achieving your corporation's sustainability objectives. So with that, I will wrap up my presentation. I know I've gone a little long here, but thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation today.
No, absolutely, and no worries at all, because we still have some time buffered in here, John, for a little bit of Q&A. So look, 5-minute klaxon, folks, or thereabouts, I should say. Any questions, now is the time to get them in, because once we're done, that is it for our summit. So any questions at all regarding smart manufacturing or CESMII or anything for John at all, let us know now and we'll bring you up. But I've got a couple questions, actually, John. Thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, so thank you for delivering it so eloquently and talking us through, what you do as an organization and supporting others. I thought it was fascinating when you mentioned about propagating a 3.0 mindset in a 4.0 world. And I just wanted to throw it forward, really, and sort of take that question on from propagating a 4.0 mindset in a 5.0 world, which is where we're headed. What are your thoughts on just evolving and thinking about the future? What manufacturing organizations can do to prepare for that? Is it much the same? Lessons they can apply, perhaps, from transitioning from 3 to 4 and take that forward? Just tell us, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the reality that most, I'll say, analysts and prognosticators haven't sort of understood yet is that most of the industry is still very much firmly rooted in Industry 3.0, and that's I think the important point that I think we are trying to develop practical responses to, and help manufacturers understand that that's okay, that this is a journey, and that we need to move forward. But I do think, to your point, the important sort of fifth industrial revolution elements, making that a very people-centric and a very worker-centric set of initiatives is key. We did a survey just 5 months ago with the SME, Society of Manufacturing Engineers, talking about what are your greatest challenges in implementing smart manufacturing. And the number one, clearly by a margin, the number one challenge manufacturers face is the workforce, the skills gap, the talent necessary to drive these initiatives. And so while I think around the broad sort of ecosystem, we're very much still in a very pre-Industry 4.0 world. I love the focus of making this people-centric and connecting our workers and connecting initiatives with the innovation systems with the innovative people, which I think we haven't done a great job of. We've put innovation in the hands of specialists, the corporate continuous improvement, lean folks, not the workers on the shop floor.
Yeah, the operators.
That's what the fourth industrial revolution, combined with this growing work and discussion on Industry 5.0, can really sort of facilitate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you've hit on two of our summit themes there as well in 5.0 and war for talent, which, we've covered here today in particular. But that leads me on really to my next question is, what advice would you therefore give beyond, focusing on the workforce, as you said there, and other things you touched on in your presentation, but what advice would you give for the smaller, medium-sized manufacturing companies then who are perhaps, overwhelmed, for want of a better word, in terms of this journey that they're about to embark on, whether they like it or not? What would your top piece of advice be for us closing us here today?
Yeah, so I think you're spot on. The small and mid-sized manufacturers are overwhelmed. There hasn't been sort of this center of gravity of sort of vendor agnostic beacon of truth, if you will, for them to trust, because frankly, they don't have a lot of time and resources to go investigate and capital funds to try and pilot a lot of things. And so we've been particularly focused on ensuring, and especially with our partners at SME, the Society of Manufacturing Engineers, as two mission-driven organizations to help manufacturers. We've been particularly careful to invest in tools and capabilities that will drive the cost and complexity of these systems implementations down. And it starts really with that business assessment, that smart manufacturing business assessment that I referenced before. Go to CESMII.org, It's a free tool. It's a very sophisticated tool,
Mm,
and there's a powerful set of outcomes that will allow you to map your as-is state in 6 important dimensions, and not necessarily conclude that technology is the most important place to start, or
mm.
supply chain is the most important place to start. We will grade you in terms of maturity in six different dimensions, and then help you build a roadmap that you can trust based on the fact that it is agnostic and not focused specifically on one domain to the exclusion of the others.
Love that, and thank you for the recommendation as well. I'm sure our audience members will be sure to pick up on that and do as you say. But throw it forward for us then very quickly, because we are running out of time now, John. But day 3 is all about the future of manufacturing in this case. What is the next big thing for CESMII in 2023? Just quickly.
I love the fact that manufacturers are starting to I shouldn't say starting, but are more and more aggressive in saying this legacy approach isn't working. The way that we've implemented systems in the past isn't working. We've got more and more great manufacturers like those on the executive council, but hundreds of others that are saying this is not sufficient. This is no longer sufficient. We want to work with technology providers that are equally engaged in creating a future for us that is more scalable, that I can implement not just in my big plants, but in my small and medium-sized plants as well.
Yeah.
That I can use as a common approach for not just my productivity initiatives, but my connected worker initiatives, my ESG initiatives as well. So there's a growing level of awareness that there is a better way, and I think that to me is a harbinger of a better tomorrow than where we are today.
Yeah. Plenty of reasons to be looking forward to 2023 as well, despite all the uncertainty, despite all the challenges we've been talking about and hearing about. John, thank you very much. I think there's no better way to close out our summit, really, with that uplifting message that you're leaving us with. So thank you for doing so. Thank you for delivering the presentation. As I say, thank you for closing us out on the Manufacturing Summit.
It's been an honor to be here and with you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Thank you very much, John. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll say goodbye. There we go. Great stuff.